7 years ago, I lost my dad. 7 years ago today, and I've talked about our relationship before. But for those of you who might be new, my relationship with my dad was challenging, to say the least. The short version is that in many ways, my dad and I couldn't have been more different. He was a third-generation railroad man, a gun owner, a hunter. He loved big trucks, Fox News, watching Ancient Aliens, and to my knowledge, never voted for anything. But that didn't keep him from yelling at the television whenever one of these liberal nut jobs started in. His words, not mine. He also loved Trump. Loved him. He ignored the failed businesses and the multiple bankruptcies and instead saw the guy who got away with it. He saw the guy who gamed the system, right? And never seemed to suffer the consequences. And he envied him for it. He refused to see Trump's bombast as a front. And like so many others, just swallowed the Trump character whole. He saw the luxury, the planes, the women, the excess, and thought, that's the life I want. And he did a pretty good job. He worked hard, he played hard. Growing up, we had houses, we had cars, we had boats, we even had an airplane. But if he had lived to see Trump run and become president, he still wouldn't have voted. But I think he probably would have had several MAGA hats lying around. I can't imagine, when I think about it, what the last 4 years of our relationship would have been like had he survived to see this election or the previous election. But I'll tell you, there's not a day goes by that I don't miss him. Weird, huh? Anyway, my name's Jeffrey Saddoris. This is episode 9, number 9. And as you probably know, the U.S. election was last night. And as of, 9:04 p.m. today, we still don't have a clear winner. Though it's looking more and more like it's going to be Mr. Biden. Now, of course, Trump is going to contest the results, insisting that they should have stopped counting while he was still ahead. And the fact that they kept counting is now clearly voter fraud. But I think the only fraud here is him. The first election I ever voted in, and I was thinking about this earlier, was 1992 between Bill Clinton and George Bush. And that's George H.W. Bush, not George W. Bush. Ross Perot was in there. Do you remember Ross Perot? I think he was more for comic relief than anything else with his charts and graphs. So I was thinking about the election and the election process and how the elections have gone in recent memory, and started doing some research, which I found actually really interesting. Trump promised a red wave, the likes we'd never seen before, which clearly hasn't happened, but it has happened before, a few times, actually. And the first one was in 1972 between Nixon and McGovern, with Nixon taking 49 states, 520 electoral votes. And in 1980, when Reagan beat Jimmy Carter, he took 44 states, and in 84, he took 49 states and 525 electoral votes, which is well beyond the 270 that he needs. Those were red waves. And from what I could find, the only time there was a blue wave, or of similar magnitude anyway, was 1936, when FDR won a second term with 46 states and 523 electoral votes. And it's interesting. If you look at the history of our elections going pretty much all the way back, the country tends to shift back and forth between red and blue. And it's not a predictable pattern, but it does happen. For example, in 1976, when Carter was running against Ford, the country was actually split pretty evenly. Carter won with, I think, 23, and Ford, where are my notes? Ford carried 27. And then in 1980 and 84, the country went red. But in 92, when Clinton won, it was 32 to 18, and 96, he won 31 to 19. So it kind of started evening out again. And that's pretty much where it's been. The percentages are also interesting. I was under the impression that you had to have a higher percentage of the popular vote to, win. I mean, yes, there's the electoral system, but most election winners are in the 40s and 50s in terms of percentages. A few were a little higher. LBJ was 61%. Thomas Jefferson was 72%. And Nixon barely broke 60%. And what was fascinating was, even though Reagan carried 49 states in 84, he still had less than 60% of the popular vote. And as we all know, winning the popular vote doesn't necessarily mean you win the presidency, as we saw in 2016 when Mr. Trump actually lost the popular vote by 3 million and change. But because of the system that we use, the electoral college system, ended up getting 302, 304. I don't remember what that one was, which pretty much brings us up to date. It's been an exhausting couple days. It's an interesting situation. I can't say I find it enjoyable, but I'm grateful to have taken more of an interest in the process, despite having, if I'm being completely honest, gone to bed about 8:30 last night because I just couldn't anymore. Couldn't take it, and had to just bow out for a little while. So we'll see what happens. It's an interesting time, and I hope it goes one way, and it looks like it's going to go that way. And then a lot of work begins to bridge the divide, because at the end of the day, this means that half of the country is in a very different place than the other half, right? And I don't know what we can do about that other than try to take care of each other. But I don't know what that means in practicality. I don't know what that means day to day, other than trying to be good humans regardless of what letter happens to be after your name. But it's tough. We'll see what happens. So, enough of this, unless you really want to talk about it. How are you guys doing? How are you getting through all of this? If you're in other parts of the world, how are you doing? I have a lot of friends in the UK that are, they're struggling with their own stuff with Brexit and Johnson trying to figure out his path forward and the country's path forward. And Australia is going through their challenge. Everybody's going through challenges. But I would love to hear from you. We can talk about this. We can talk about whatever you want. As I said in the chat, I've been pretty much wiped out all day today, so I don't have a lot prepared. I'm sure I can figure something out, but I do have this tasty gin and tonic right here. And let's play something. Feel free to call in 202-539-0209, or you can Skype me at Saddoris. And this is, what do we want to start with? You know what, let's start with something funky. This is Freedom by the Originals.
Everybody, young, old, all you lovers, this is our time to rise back from the sand and claim our freedom. Talking about freedom, let yourself be free.
I give you freedom, yes it's right. Freedom, start right now.
Talking about freedom,
Get your freedom tonight. Freedom, I give you freedom, yes it's right. Freedom,
let yourself be free.
start right now. Freedom, get your freedom tonight.
Freedom, well, freedom.
Freedom by the Originals. And just as a reminder, we're going to say this every week, all of the music that you're going to hear is courtesy of artlist.io. Artlist.io. I've really been enjoying them quite a bit. I find myself just downloading and listening to a bunch of stuff just because their selection is terrific. So if you like it, artlist.io, there's a link in the show notes, or there will be if there's not already. And if you sign up, you get 2 extra months with your subscription. So thank you, Artlist. When I was in high school, so I got to back up. High school, I started high school in 81. Let's see, would it be 81? Yeah, because I graduated 85. So first term of Reagan, the country was pretty well read. You know, it was sort of Reagan's, the height of the Cold War, at least for my generation. And there was a guy that I went to high school with. His name was Charles. And Charles self-published a conservative newsletter called Steer Toward the Right Direction. And Mark, I don't know if you're listening to this. My friend Mark listens to the show every once in a while. He's my oldest friend. We've been friends since 1980. And Mark knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, so I don't remember the day that it came out, but it was a weekly newsletter, and as far as I can remember, I think it was weekly, but it was just this high school conservative newspaper that came. I think it was on Fridays and articles. I don't remember whether he was the only writer or whether he had a staff of writers, but it was just there was this buzz, there was this talk around like, oh, hey, did you get the new issue of Steer? And it was funny because then where I went to high school, it was a fairly conservative, fairly affluent town, so there were a lot of conservatives, and it ended up being a big part of the discussion in our high school experience. So steer toward the right direction. I don't know if I've still got copies of that thing somewhere. I may have copies of it somewhere in a box. If I can find some, I will dig it up for you. How's everybody doing out there? Everybody okay? I watched a terrific Richard. Are you here? Richard Boutwell. I watched some of Richard Boutwell's live stream in his darkroom. Well, I wasn't in his darkroom. He was live streaming from his darkroom, and I think it was like a 4-hour live stream doing alternative printing and digital internegatives. Fascinating because it's all stuff that have been really interested in and continue to be interested in as I kind of make my way toward a wet plate camera, which I know is in my future somewhere. I just can't seem to find one that I really like. So I continue to look on eBay. But the idea of bridging analog and digital in a photographic realm, the way I've kind of bridged analog and digital in my artwork is fascinating to me. So I very much want to get into large format and start shooting wet plate and integrate that into artwork. I'd also like to create digital internegatives to then use as the basis for things like gum bichromate printing, for example, which is also a terrific sort of blending of painting and photography, because you can build multiple layers up, and it's almost like creating, the way I understand it, I haven't done it yet, but I have a couple books and I've spoken to a number of people. The way I understand it is you have a lot of control over color and texture, different paper choices, and it is similar in that respect to painting, where you start with one, for example, you could start with a Van Dyke Brown layer and then add multiple colored layers over the top of it. Or you could do a CMYK, multiple CMYK passes, and then a black pass, and end up with, for all intents and purposes, a color print, but you're doing it a layer, a color at a time, which is absolutely fascinating to me. And Richard, if you want to talk about this, I know you have way more knowledge about this than I do, and but it is very interesting to me as I try and figure out what's next. And it's interesting. Last night I was in a very different spot. I was questioning if the election were to go one way, what would that mean for talking about creativity? What does that mean for talking about photography and painting? Do those things become more relevant? Do they become less relevant? I'm not sure, but what I do know is that I have to keep doing the things that mean something to me. I have to keep sort of tacking my internal path and not worry about the external stuff as much as I want to. As much as I want to let the external drive the internal, it's taken me so long to get to a place where I feel comfortable letting the internal sort of loose, as it were, and seeing the results of that. I mean, I'm closing in on 75 paintings, I think, since, I don't know, Adrianne, chime in. When did I start painting again? I can't remember. I think it was maybe April or May. Might have been May. But irrelevant. 2 months, 1 month, either way, having that large of a body of work is pretty epic for me. So, and the conversations that I've been having have been terrific. So I think I just need to keep moving forward, whatever forward looks like from day to day. And it does often change day to day. Many of you are probably dealing with similar things. Where to go next? Let's see. There's a question in the chat. In 2016, I hear people mention that the shock of the Trump election would, quote, lead people to make great art, end quote. Did it? Is that the way that this all works? That's a great question. Great art has often come out of great strife. Great music has often come out of great strife. Have I personally made any great art? Probably not. I've made lots of stuff, but I don't, whether it's great or not, I don't know. But the idea that struggle and strife do inspire, I think that's something that we've seen, throughout history. I think back on some of my favorite music. I mean, it's a little different thing, but some of my favorite music has come out of sadness or depression or anxiety. Some of my favorite songs are reactions to those feelings. And I don't typically gravitate to happy art, happy music, if that makes sense. I tend to gravitate to things that are a bit gritty or a bit darker, if you will. I mean, dark's not really the right thing. I don't quite know what the word is to describe it, but yeah, John, I think that I don't think it's the way it always works, but I think it's definitely a way that it could work. Let's talk about it. You have something to add? Do you have questions? You want to chime in with something? Give me a call, 202-539-0209, or Skype me at Saddoris, and let's wrestle with it for a little bit. I'm game. Who's in? Don't make me have Adrianne call in again, because she'll do it. She will do it. I'm sorry, I'm very thirsty. Let's see. Hi, who's this?
Hey, this is John.
Hey, John. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, just up the road.
And perhaps a well-defined place as far as this particular election is concerned.
Right. Yeah. How you doing? You holding together okay? How are you?
I think so. I have a lot of friends who I think have a lot more personally on the line, so to speak, and that they, hey, as a straight white guy, then I have a lot more protection, so to speak, than friends of mine who are, non-binary or in gay relationships and all that kind of stuff. That it's not exactly the happy place to be right now. Right.
Does that surprise you that this is where we're at as a country in 2020, almost 2021?
I think that it's the reckoning for me is that even assuming that the polls go the way they are, is that we have to deal with in some way as a country that it was this close, and we have so many people who are willing to buy into that Trump bombast, and they responded well to those lies and to the racism quite overtly, and that fed their fears and their angers in a way that gave a lot of political power to somebody. And what does that mean about where we need to go as a country? It's going to be something we need to wrestle with as a country, and it's not going to be something that's going to go away in any short period of time either.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but is another old white guy the solution? I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah. Yep. I think certainly I was talking with my daughter today about the concerns that she has and the concept of, you want a electable person that's going to make progress in the direction you want, or are you dreaming of that unicorn?
Right.
And you're going to reject all realistic options until somehow that magically comes to pass.
Right.
And that's a tough pill for many people I know to swallow.
Yeah. How old is your daughter?
13.
13. Wow. Yeah. Wow.
So it's quite a time to start becoming aware of the political process, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yes. I think this cabinet, I mean, look, if this all gets sorted out and we do have a president-elect Biden in the next little bit, I think this cabinet is going to be one of the most important in our lifetimes. The selection process and who fills some of these roles and who we can look to, who your daughter's generation can look to not just lead, but inspire change and inspire us to, as cliche as it sounds, reach out to one another instead of pushing each other away.
I think that might be true with the potential Biden administration, though I think the caution would be that 4 years ago, a lot of people placed a lot of hopes in the adults in the room that would be coming on, and a lot of people who I think had very good intentions and had more traditional Republican views were part of the Trump administration, and boy, we've seen what that turnover in the cabinet was like.
Right.
But so that certainly was, I think, a great frustration for many lifelong Republicans who, fit some of the eras that you were describing earlier in the show, who find themselves quite in a different place compared to where the last 4 years went. So,
yeah, I would. I know a few people who voted for Trump the first time around who did not vote the same way this time. And I wonder what that statistic is. I'd like to hear more detail about, people who because I don't agree with virtually anything about him, but I understand, or at least I can try to see how that would be appealing to people in certain situations, certain parts of the country. I mean, I can kind of get where they're coming from in terms of the anger that they feel and wanting an outsider to fix it, and all of the sort of promises that were made. I can kind of see it, but at the same time, it still seems so foreign, and there has been virtually nothing that has come to pass that was promised. I ask people, ask yourself 3 questions. Are you safer? Are you healthier? Are you more prosperous under this administration? And for the majority of Americans, I don't think the answer is yes.
I think the concept of people voting against their own best interest is one that I think has puzzled people for quite some time. That we are not, in economic terms, we are not rational economic actors. Right. And boy, let's be glad of it, because that's where that's where a lot of our art would hang out, right?
Right.
But I also think about this in terms that this has very much been a classic conservatism, in the sense that conservatism calls to the past, and often a very romanticized past that never really existed. And if the opposite of that can be that progressives are perhaps looking to a future that could never possibly come to pass. And over time, we tend to see that eventually things fade into the conservative past, so to speak.
Sure.
The slow line bending towards progress kind of concept. So, and I think that's interesting for us trying to figure out how we're trying to channel these things.
Mm-hmm.
The progress will never be as fast as some people want, and maybe it's too fast for many people who aren't comfortable with how rudely they're being yanked into the future.
Right. Right.
So,
are you cautiously, or maybe not cautiously? Where are you? Are you hopeful? Are you cautiously optimistic? Where do you sit with all of this as it stands right now?
I would say probably I'm cautiously optimistic in the sense that it looks like we're gonna have, this is not going to be over tomorrow morning. This is not going to be over in a week.
Right.
And like I said earlier, I think that as a nation we're going to be struggling with this for years. Heck, it may not be that many of these things don't make substantial progress until my daughter's generation is doing more of the calling of the shots.
Mm-hmm.
There's some clearly deep-seated things here going on. I think that we have to what we can hopefully guide was the younger generation steps up and takes more is is this what you want?
Right.
What kind of world do you want to be in? What kind of world do you envision for the future? And I think for a lot of people, hopefully we'd say that dreams of a post-war period that was unique in history is not a period that's going to suddenly reappear. Where do you really want to go? Don't just look to the past.
Are these conversations that you are able to have with your daughter? Is she interested in having these types of conversations yet? Is she engaged or becoming engaged at 13?
She's becoming engaged, and I think that she's finding this a very stressful world to begin to be engaged with, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people have found this particularly over the last 4 years, is that this is something that has made the young. We've often said over the past decades that that gosh, we wish that more young people would vote. That how come we can count on the old folks to vote, we can't count on the young people who have so much to benefit from seeing things change. I think this has perhaps been a shock that perhaps is motivating more young people to want to be involved and want to jump in more. So we'll see if that bears out, if that continues to have momentum, or whether or not we settle back to a more normal demographic level of involvement where young people have enough of their own lives to deal with it. They don't get as active in such things. We'll see.
It certainly seems like in this election, I haven't read exact statistics. I don't know if they're even available yet, but it seems like there was a greater younger turnout this year, this election cycle, than there was in 2016.
I'll be very interested to see a lot of the breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some really interesting breakdown of the various demographics that we had in 2016 of understanding where things went. And it will take a little bit, I think, for that to come out. And perhaps we should look for people to take some time to be a little thoughtful about this. But I think we will definitely see that. And heck, the people who want to be the political movers and shakers, 4 years from now, 8 years from now, they're going to be pouring over that information too. Right. So the signals that we are sending in the election that we just had, there are going to be thoughtful people who are looking to their own self-interest and exactly how they can finagle this into their own political futures.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be reading those tea leaves.
Sure. So tell me about your question. What inspired the question that you put in the chat? Are you a maker yourself? Do you create? And if so, what types of things do you make?
So I am. So I'm primarily a photographer, and then I do a lot of digital editing on my photography to try to approach things from a little bit more painterly point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm usually working in realms that are more fantastic and fantastical in their outlook, and maybe trying to learn a little bit about trying to be a little more abstract on top of the photography. But so that's a very escapist direction, and that fits with a lifelong love of fantasy and science fiction and such. And I think when I hear people talk about what do you create from the turmoil, I think sometimes we do see things that are in the escapist realms. I mean, you can certainly look at some beautiful things that came out of the 70s and 80s in terms of the wild colors and the Yes album cover type things and
Sure.
such like that.
Yeah.
So we have this stereotype, I think, a lot of times about the long-suffering poet. And I think that with our romanticism about mental illness layered on top of that,
Right.
we perhaps don't give ourselves room that, hey, no, you can create art when you're happy too. You don't have to, go off and drink yourself into a bottle to become a great poet. Do we romanticize the pain and the suffering as a source for artistic creation too much, to the point where we glamorize it, and we almost tell art school students maybe that gosh, you should suffer for your art.
Right.
Do we lead people in a bad direction there?
Is great art the reward for the suffering? Is that the equation that we're teaching and that we're supporting?
And that the suffering has to be a precondition.
Right,
If you really wanted to make great art, you have to go through that. Because I think there is such a strong stereotype, and I think I certainly hear it that from people, even today. I don't know. I think it's an interesting challenge. Sure, I mean, maybe if you're complacent in your life and all this kind of stuff, maybe you don't have a reason to really bend your head down into whatever your chosen craft is and such, whether that's from escape or does make a statement. Both of those are maybe in opposition, so to speak. But I don't know. I guess my big thing out of this, when I heard people talk about how it was going to lead to art, and heck, maybe it has, is it just makes me worried that we're setting people up for an unhealthy place to create from.
Mm. Did you ever buy into that narrative at any point in your life, younger, older?
Maybe when I was younger, to some degree, like, I guess I can't create something great because I haven't suffered in some way that I'm going to draw from, or something like that. But,
I have no
it gives
depths
you
to plumb.
Exactly, right? Hey, my life's been going pretty good. I guess I can't do that. So I don't know. I think, of course, we very much selectively pull from artists' history. And, this one bad thing happened here that inspired them, and maybe perhaps disregarding the happier years of success or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder how this will translate. I'm going to have to think about your question and perhaps even do a little digging, because again, in my own experience, though as I said, I gravitate to stuff like that, but I'm making an assumption too. I'm making an assumption about the condition. I mean, Trent Reznor could be the happiest guy in the world. I don't know, but the stuff he produces makes me think that he's not, that he's angry, that he's,
And I suppose you've probably heard some of the the early demo tapes from before he really forged his the style that made him successful.
I have not heard them. No.
One was passed around when I was in college, and I was in college in the late 80s, early 90s. Yeah,
he wasn't an acoustic folk singer, was he?
No, it was very poppy.
Was he really?
And,
no.
But maybe that was part of finding himself.
Right,
was
right.
that lots of people are doing this. Maybe that was the true expression, right? Was when he did plumb what he had in him, then it came out dark, and that was what was true to him, and that's what made it resonate.
Sure.
So, and maybe everyone needs to do that, a little bit of exploring around and not just take the route of whatever was popular at the time, of course. But,
right.
But yeah, I mean, and, that doesn't mean that we can't enjoy Nine Inch Nails and at the same time go back to our lives and still think, oh yeah, I'm still pretty good with where I am.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'd love to hear you more explore it more, just in the sense that I've always enjoyed your talking about where creativity comes from. Where does our inspiration come from?
I wish I knew.
And how can we solve it?
I'm still trying
Well,
to
that's why
figure
I keep
it
asking the
out.
questions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it is the question that drives me. Where does it come from? And it gets me back to the Rilke quote that I have loved for years, and that I kind of, if I ever did get a tattoo, that would likely be one of the first ones I get. And that's just live the questions. It is, it is through living those questions that, as Rilke said, you may one day live your way to an answer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But until then, I mean, all I have are the questions, and I will gladly keep pursuing them.
If you ask enough different people the questions, maybe you'll hear some things that resonate with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to ask you a question. Would you? Well, two things. What part of Massachusetts are you in?
So I'm in a smaller town called Berlin. It's about halfway between Boston and Worcester, if you're familiar with the
okay.
space.
Yeah, I have a photographer friend who lives in Worcester.
Okay, so and I'm about to say Adrianne might be more familiar with the space.
She is
I guess,
probably
from what I've
very
just heard.
familiar. She will likely chime in either on the chat or on my phone. Question 2, would you mind sending me either an Instagram or a website? I'd love to see some of your work.
Sure, I'd be glad to. I'd actually dropped your line earlier today about when your show was going to be. That's my Instagram handle, but I will absolutely drop you a line as well.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
All right.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Great. I'm actually going to go tuck in said daughter and then come back to your show.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon, John.
Take care.
Bye. Oh, see, that was nice. Look at that. I love that. I am going to have to dive into this question because my answer changes, and I'd love to talk to more people about it and see kind of where you all are at around this. So the question, if you are listening somewhere and not able to see the chat, John's question was, in 2016, I heard people mention that the shock of the Trump election would lead people to make great art. And his question is simply, did it? Is that the way this all works? Does great art need to come out of great suffering? That's a big question. But if you have something to chime in with it, 202-539-0209. And also, if you are or have been, I guess you wouldn't be now. Well, you might be now if you're on your third or fourth listen. If you were an On Taking Pictures listener, yesterday, Bill and I rolled tape on a brand new conversation that we haven't. Let's see, when did we record last? It's been a long time, but we spoke a few months ago, and terrific conversation, and then spoke a few more times, and thought, hey, why don't we record one of these and see where it goes? So that is in my Everything feed. If you are not subscribed to that, just look for Jeffrey Saddoris Everything wherever you listen to podcasts, and that's where you'll find it. All right, so let's play another tune, and feel free to call in 202-539-0209. Oh, gosh. Let's play Money Can't Buy Just Anything. All right? Be back in a couple minutes.
What's your business here? Are you trying to liberate me? I never said money start, money slow. One day you're kissing, Monday you're missing.
All right. Money Can't Buy Just Anything. Hot Rod Elegance. Good song. Thank you again, John, for calling in. That was really very cool. Boutwell, you're out there somewhere. What do you have on your mind? You want to talk about something? Richard sent me a really lovely email earlier. I know you're kind of wiped out, but do you want to chime in with something? Feel free to reach out. Let's see. Let me look through my notes. What else do you want to talk about? Maybe I will see. Let's see what Adrianne's up to. Adrianne, are you going to call? Adrianne is a sociologist, so it might be interesting to get her take on some of the things that John said, because I know that she is a fan of telling me that meaning is sort of collective. Meaning is socially created, and I find that the more I learn about sociology, the more I find it very interesting. Let's see what she has to say. Hello, dear.
Hello, let me turn down my machine here.
Turn down your radio.
One moment, please. So, hey, yeah.
Let me give a little background.
Please.
Adrianne
Go.
texted me while John was talking saying, "Love," all caps, "this guy!" exclamation point. So what was it about what he was saying that clicked with you? Was it the stuff around the art? Was it stuff around politics? Was it just his general kind of vibe or demeanor? Because I really enjoyed the call as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of all of those things. The way he both articulated his experience and reflections on the last election and where things seem to stand at the current point. I can relate to all of that. How I have felt about past elections and kind of how I feel about this one is not just about me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about what it's going to mean for me personally or even us as a family.
Right.
So I appreciated John sort of also having that bigger perspective about the potential impact on all sorts of folks, both sort of known and unknown, familiar and unfamiliar. So he started there. So I was sort of like, I was in from the jump.
Right. Yeah, I'm curious and eager to talk to Sylvia about her experience with all of this and how, she's got friends from other countries. She's got friends who are identifying as non-binary. So I'm really curious to hear from her how she's taking all of this in and what kinds of discussions she's having with her friends and peers.
Yeah, you didn't mention when John was on the phone, and I don't know if he knows this or remembers this from past episodes of things, but for people who may not, I have a 14-year-old daughter, so around the same age as John's
Mm-hmm.
daughter. And for people who don't know, she has been, we talk politics and government and things like that a lot anyway. And beliefs and morals and all sorts of things. But she's in her first year of high school, and she's taking a national and local government class right now. So the timing could not be better because she's also talking about this stuff in school. So in addition to already thinking about it. And I do know she's been following, we haven't seen her since yesterday, since the election. She's at her dad's this week. But I do know that she's been following the returns. We haven't yet had a chance to sort of debrief with her, but I'm sure that in her own way, even though she's in crunch time at the end of the quarter, I know that she's been following along and sort of going through her own kind of emotional roller coaster
Right.
around all of this, because in 2016, we were talking about it the other day, in 2016, she was staying up with me. That was really the first election that she was interested in beyond me just talking at her about it. And she was staying up watching the returns with me. And I think around like 10 or so at night, which was late for her then, I made her go to bed because I saw the way that things were going. And just the other day, she said to me, "You didn't let me stay up and watch it." And I said, "Well, it was late." And she's like, "Yeah, but I wanted to stay up." So she clearly has her own sort of interest in all this stuff. So it will be interesting to kind of process with her and see how she, how she takes it all in and both individually and in talking with other classmates and friends and stuff about it.
Right. She is, I will tell you this, she is so much more engaged and informed than I was at this point in my life, at her age in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, I mean, that's partly an intentional decision on my part, because I grew up in a household where my mother, who I lived with most of the time, thought that voting was important, but it was private and you didn't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up becoming envious of my friends who had parents who were politically active, who talked about politics and things like that sort of over the course of growing up. And so I was very mindful of wanting to do that differently if I had a kid.
Right.
So yeah, it's not an accident that she's
Right.
more informed than I think either of us kind of were in our households as kids. And she, the other day we were walking around and she was being really frustrated that she's not yet able to vote.
Right.
And she will be old enough to vote in the next general election. And apparently there's a kid, I don't know if he's from her high school or one of the other public high schools here, who's been organizing to get the legal voting age here in Maryland down from 18 to 16. And that's, people are organizing to try to do that in other places too. But yeah, she was really itchy and antsy and annoyed that she is not yet old enough to participate, which is, that's what we want.
Yeah, I think part of it for me, part of it was fear. Again, kind of growing up and being close to that age during the Cold War, I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know what was going on. Sort of no news is good news. And I don't remember exactly what my mindset was, but I couldn't vote in 80. And then I couldn't vote in 84, obviously. So 92 was the first one. What was 84? Who was that? Was that Mondale? Reagan Mondale?
Probably. Because, yeah, that was the second term that Reagan got elected. He was elected in 80 and 84.
Right. And then Clinton in 92. So that must have been Mondale.
Yeah, I think it was Mondale. And interestingly, I mean...
Or no, it wouldn't have been Mondale. It would have been Dukakis, wouldn't it?
Okay.
Hold on.
Yeah, I don't remember. We can look it up. But I'm going to
84,
share with people while
okay.
you're looking that up.
Sorry, 88 was Dukakis. That's the one I did not vote in. It was George H.W. Bush and Michael Dukakis.
Yeah, and interestingly, talking about sort of envying friends who grew up in more politically active and aware families, one of my best friends in college, her mother ran Mondale's campaign.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, to go to college and to meet people who had grown up, and I have good friends now who grew up organizing with their parents and things like that and being heavily involved. And I was like, damn, that's what it's supposed to be like. So yeah.
As embarrassing as this is, I don't think either of my parents ever voted in a presidential election their entire lives.
Yeah, and some people just don't. I think not to get wonky about it, but I think the value proposition of voting has not always been communicated well to certain communities and to certain folks.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of sense of kind of civic duty. Oh, you know what I didn't do today? I didn't change my profile picture to the magnet that's on our fridge that says you can't complain if you don't vote, which I tend to do. And now I feel like I have to caveat it because, of course, with voter suppression, lots of people are not allowed to vote, et cetera, et cetera. But that sense of, it being sort of a fundamental civic responsibility to vote if you're able to,
right,
is something that is really core to me. So,
what's the from the Breakfast Club? Why do you have a fake ID? So I can vote.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's strange. I mean, like I said at the top, my dad would yell at the TV and would complain about where things were at, but never put two and two together that you do have a voice. It's only one voice, but if your one voice and my one voice and his one voice and her one voice and our one voices all sort of say the same thing, then that's where change comes.
Yeah, I mean, there's strength in numbers, and all those numbers add up.
As we are seeing tonight.
I mean, collective action is a huge area of sort of research and writing. And it's, it is interesting the degree to which people are willing to get activated and engage and to be part of the process. And I have a new colleague who she's lived all over the world, but she's originally from New Zealand, and she recently has started the process to apply for citizenship. And people were saying to her, "Oh, it's too bad you can't vote in this election, that you're not yet able to." And she said, "You say that, but you don't assume that you know who I would vote for." And she told me this yesterday,
cheeky.
And I said, right. And I said, and she's very cheeky. And I said to her, I said, maybe. I said, but while I care who you vote for, what I care more about is that you vote. I said, I'm one of those people that, like, the bigger the turnout, the better. Like, philosophically, the better.
I have a hard time with that one in 2016 and 2020. I have a hard time with, it doesn't matter, just go vote. Sorry, it matters. It matters to me.
No. I said it doesn't. No, I don't. I didn't say it doesn't matter, but this is one of those things. Both of those things can be true.
That's one of your favorite
I care
things
very
to
much
say.
who people are working
yes,
for.
and
I mean, who people
come
are
on,
voting
give us
for.
one.
Yes. No, I'm not going to. Of course I care who people are voting for,
Right.
But I think for the good of democracy and the civil society and the common good, I think it is a better exercise
Sure.
to have a more active voting population. And I do firmly believe that. And I do think that no matter how the current election turns out, I think it's vital that every single vote get counted, even if it doesn't end up going the way that I wanted it to. As a matter of principle. Oh, you're laughing at me.
No, I'm not.
I feel like it's fine.
No, a notification just popped up. Somebody said the only way Trump gets to 270 now is if he loses 50 pounds. I'm sorry.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one.
That's so wrong.
You're just jealous you didn't make that joke yourself.
No, I wouldn't do that.
Oh. So yeah, I mean, I do, and okay. I'm gonna make an analogy here.
Yes,
I was thinking
please.
earlier. A friend of mine, a grad school friend of mine, posted earlier that can tell which ones of you all have never played spades before. Because if you've ever played spades,
What is
you know
spades?
that spades is a card game. Spades is an awesome card game. I should teach you how to play spades. He posted a quote from someone saying that I can tell you've never played spades before, because if you've played spades, you know that you're not out as long as you have a possible. Basically, as long as you still have, something that you might be able to, the game ain't over if you still got a possible, which is kind of, an analogy for how this election is going. But I was thinking of it in terms of, and, I don't know if John was able to get back on or not, but I think about it in terms of being a Red Sox fan, which is, you expect,
with the Red Sox again.
No. I have another point to make that you'll like better after this.
Okay. I'm just playing.
If you've grown up a Red Sox fan, or not just a Red Sox fan, Cubbies fan, whatever, you can insert a number of different teams here.
Sure.
You know to expect that it's going to be an emotional roller coaster. There's going to be lots of drama, and that it ain't going to be over until it's completely over. So there is some sense of like, there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. So even though last night, you said on the live stream we did this morning that I was greatly optimistic or something like that. And it's not just that it's not quite right, because it's not that I was greatly optimistic, but I have a felt sense of things aren't over till they're over.
Right. See, and I'm a burn it to the ground guy.
You're a swing sort of guy, yes. But my other point, which I think you'll like better, is that despite being sort of genetically programmed to be a Red Sox fan, I actually love the game of baseball more than I love the Red Sox per se.
I will vouch for you.
I love a good game.
Yeah. Adrianne's one of the biggest baseball fans just of the game that I've ever met. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so that's kind of, and I think for me there's a parallel there around, John's back in and he says that his wife is a lifelong Red Sox fan. So she gets it. She understands.
Right.
But it is sacrilege to many people for me to say, yeah, but I love baseball even more than the Red Sox. I'm not a my team or no team. I love it when they win, but I love the game and the sport and good plays and things like that. And I kind of feel that way about the political process too.
Right.
Of course I want, my side, or the side whose sort of morals and policies and things, I align myself with. Of course I want that side to win, but I would rather, in addition to that, I wouldn't say I would rather, but in addition to that, I want there to be sort of high levels of participation and turnout and engagement, because
Sure.
I feel like that is better. That is one of the
it's
things
certainly
that
better
makes us
for
better
the system.
and a better functioning society.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about baseball.
I miss baseball. It's funny. A quick aside about baseball. I used to love baseball as a kid. I played baseball for years. Although I will say I watched a lot of baseball on TV. The only baseball game before coming here to DC, the only baseball game I had ever been to was I must have been maybe 9, maybe 10. I'd have to look up the game. But it was when Nolan Ryan was pitching for the Angels and pitched a no-hitter, I want to say, against the Baltimore Orioles. And that's the only professional baseball game I'd ever gone to until coming here. And then we went to half a dozen games that first year, and then probably at least the same or more for the next couple years.
Yeah, probably. This is a really fun. This is a real. If any of you ever get to DC during baseball season, it's worth going to check out a game at Nationals Park, which is easily accessible by the Metro. Lots of people go after work, even on a weeknight. It's a great park, and it's fun. And sometimes the teams have been great, and other times they're crappy. So
But there is something about that park. There is something so cool. This again, coming as a transplant from the West Coast to the East Coast. There is something so cool about, especially going to a night game and seeing the Washington Monument lit up in the distance, or seeing the Capitol lit up in the distance from the ballpark, right? From out, because we don't get great seats, but it doesn't really matter because they've got big screens and, you know, the angle, the sight lines are pretty good from everywhere. But man, there's just something so cool about seeing those things. And maybe it's because I'm not from here. Maybe I haven't lived here long enough to take it for granted yet, but I still really, really get a charge out of seeing the DC skyline.
Yeah. I definitely think that we all miss baseball a lot. That was one of the things we really felt the absence of.
Yeah.
This summer was baseball, but you know,
we'll play
it'll be
again.
back.
We'll watch again. They will play again. I won't play again, but they will.
Oh, and I have to say, Nationals Park has a huge advantage over places like Fenway. As much as I love Fenway in Boston and other places, other big stadiums, is that tickets are actually still relatively affordable.
Yeah,
It's
the Post does
amazing.
sponsored tickets.
The Washington Post does.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do sponsored tickets as low as sometimes $5, $8, $10 or whatever. And
Yeah.
the park's small enough that even if you get those seats that are way high up or far out or whatever, as you said, the sight lines are pretty good and you can walk around and stand and watch segments. So that's another huge win for Nationals Park, is that tickets are affordable. Whereas I don't even know what an intro, you know, a baseline, not baseline literally, but an entry level ticket for Fenway is now. But I think it's $40, $50, $60 a person or something.
Going to see the Yankees. I talked to Freddie about
Or
going.
Yankee Stadium. Yeah,
That's a
same thing.
commitment. Going to see a Yankee game is a commitment.
Yeah.
You got to be sure about that.
Especially if you're a Red Sox fan, going to see the two teams play each other. That's a commitment. But fun. I mean, Yankee Stadium is a great park. They've had great coaches. They've had great players. So again,
Yeah.
to my point that like a great ball game is
Did you
great
ever
experience.
know that Linda and Michael went to the last game played at the old Yankee Stadium before they tore it down? Did you ever know that?
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. They flew to New
I
York
went-
just to go to that last game.
That's amazing. That's like you going to LA to see the last Rush show.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
The
Yeah,
heart
with-
wants what the heart wants.
right. With Mark, with the same guy that I saw the very first Rush show with. So 37 years before or something like that, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Well, should we wrap up? Should we let these people go to sleep?
Yeah, sure.
And by
let us
these
go to
people, I
sleep,
mean,
too.
should we let me go to sleep?
Right. It's been a very long day. It's been a very long night.
That's right.
But yeah, thanks for letting me barge in again and
I love it when you barge
yap
in.
at you and the people.
Yeah, I love it when you barge in, and I think everybody loves when you barge in. All right, so I'm going to play one
Do you
more.
have a song to play us out?
I do,
Yeah, right on.
I do, and it's appropriately titled "Farewell." This is Duffmusiq. Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Jeffrey Saddoris, everything, wherever you listen to podcasts. Go listen to the conversation between Bill Wadman and myself that we put up yesterday. Again, all of the music that you're hearing is from artlist.io. Link is in the show notes. 2 months free when you sign up. What am I missing?
Tell the people how to get in touch with you.
Oh, sure. You can email me. Well, you can leave a comment on YouTube. You can talk back at jeffreysaddoris.com. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jeffrey Saddoris, or I think that's about it. I'm easy to get a hold of. Richard
We're
Boutwell
probably gonna
says,
do this
"I'm
again
so
next
happy." Richard?
I
Why are you
know.
so happy? To listen to Adrianne talk about baseball and not my BS. Your stuff is not BS. Stop it. Stop it. I reject that. Richard Boutwell, fake news.
We'll get back to
fake
your
news,
BS.
Richard. Yeah, we'll be back. We will be back next week. Yeah, sorry for the little bit of scatterbrainedness on my part. But thank you, John, for calling in and being such a terrific part of the show. I appreciate it. Feel free to call back anytime, and I'll see if I can get Richard to call in next time, and we will figure out a time to talk together outside of this. And I think that probably won't be until next season's PD. If I haven't told you, Process Driven is going to a seasonal model in 21. So the last 2 episodes of this year will be Gregory Crudson and Joshua Jackson, who has a brand new book out. Actually, they both have new books out. Gregory has a new body of work and a new book called An Eclipse of Moths, which is a beautiful body of work that Jeff Tweedy did some music for. And then Joshua Jackson has a new book called Sleepless in Soho that just came out. Gosh, I think it just came out last week on Satanta Press. So we'll talk to him and Gregory in the near future. There, have I covered everything?
I think you have.
All right. Thank you very much for being here, everyone. I am so thrilled to be doing this show. I love what we're doing here. I love that we are building this space where people can just call in and we can have a conversation, and it doesn't have to be about anything, and yet it can be about something very specific to you or to me. It doesn't, this is a good thing. So thank you for being a part of it, and I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.